presentation, which is titled Food Labels. Question: why would this be important enough to have a training? The answer: it's because we have no idea how to read them. And with all of that being said, we are going to have Dr. Greg walk us through the scary, arduous, misleading process of hitting the grocery store and walking down the aisle. So, Dr. Greg, thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Well, thank you, Woodson, and it really is indeed a pleasure to be talking about food labels tonight. And, quite truthfully, I really was not very good at reading food labels either. And Dr. Mike did this presentation back in March, and I learned quite a few things, actually. Now there's a number of things that we have to, take into consideration when we're looking at food labels. One is that they're constantly changing. There's competing interests at play. We got the food industry, we have nutrition activists, we have, our legislature. All of these things have their own motives when it comes to what people have to put on food labels, what food producers have to put on food labels. And this slide, I think, really highlights, sort of how confusing it is. I really don't want you to pay too much attention to it, but there's a lot of stuff that's in a food label, and there's a lot of hidden things in a food label as well. And it all boils down to legal definitions. What are the legal definitions that food manufacturers have to comply with for reporting standards on a food label? Now, the next slide really shows a very simple, this slide, and I do love this slide. And this is, I think, how most people feel when they're looking at a food label. Okay, in fact, if you don't have a degree in nutrition or chemistry, there's a lot of information on there that you just sort of gloss over, that you can't understand and you won't understand unless you really take a little time to educate yourself on what is what on a food label. Now, the basics, okay, and this is important. 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. 1 gram of protein has 4 calories. And 1 gram of carbohydrate also has 4 calories. So when you're comparing the calorie content of protein and carbs, it's equivalent, okay? So it makes the calculation a little easier. Rule of thumb is that, fat has twice the calories per gram of carbohydrates or proteins. And we're going to touch on that a little bit later, because when we were trying to get people to lose weight and sort of live a healthier, sort of heart-healthy lifestyle, we vilified fats, and we're going to talk about that. Now, this is a sample label, and this is actually a very simplified label. It has some very basic information. The serving size, and that's important. For most Americans, a half a cup is not the standard serving size. But when it comes to the label, a lot of things have a half a cup as a standard serving size. And when we look at the calories per serving, it's 250. That's the total calories. We break that down into the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein. We can see that there's 14 grams of fat. We multiply that by 9, we come up with 126 calories. When we look at the carbohydrates, this is where it gets a little confusing, because we have the total carbohydrates, which is 26 grams, and then we have dietary fiber, which we'll come to in a little bit, which is 0. So the total carbohydrates in this example come from sugar. So 26 times 4 equals 104 calories. Then when we look at the protein, 4 grams, 4 times 4 is 16. But when you add all of that up, it only comes to 246 calories. So there's 4 calories missing. And this is very common on food labels. And in fact, when you really look at food labels, the biggest disparity that I've seen is 60 calories. So there's 60 calories that are missing when you do the math. Okay, isn't that interesting? So, and that all has to has to do with the definition. What is the legal definition? So let's move on to the next slide, which is a real food label. Now this is fiber 1, and everybody would think that fiber 1 is a very healthy breakfast alternative. But when we actually look at what's going on here, we can see that the total calories per serving, and again that's half a cup, okay, is 180 calories. When we break it down, okay, we see that there are 3 grams of fat, okay, times 9 is 27. When we look at the carbohydrates, and I want you to look over to the right-hand column where we actually see the breakdown on the carbohydrates, we could see there's 41 grams of total carbohydrates. But here, this is where the fiber enters in. Dietary fibers, there's 9 grams of fiber. Well, there are actually 2 types of fiber. There's the soluble and the insoluble type. So in this example, we can see there are 3 grams of soluble fiber. That's part of the total fiber content. So that means there are 6 grams of insoluble fiber, which makes up the 9 total grams. Well, fiber is indigestible. So the calories associated with fiber, or the potential calories associated with fiber, don't count for us because we can't break them down. So you take the 41 total carbohydrates minus 9 for the total fiber, that gives us 32. Okay, 32 times 4 is 128. Then the protein calories, well, there's 3 grams of protein per serving, times 4 calories, that equals 12. Again, when we do the math, it doesn't quite add up, okay? We get 167 calories when we actually do the math out of 180. That leaves 13 calories unaccounted for. So where are these calories? Okay, and when we dig a little bit deeper, a lot of these come from the alcohol sugars. Alcohol sugars are sweeteners that technically we can't digest, but when they pass through our digestive system and they wind up in the colon, the bacteria can actually work on these fiber sugars, causing a lot of gas, a lot of bloating, and if you eat too many of them, it can actually cause some diarrhea. But when the bacteria work on these alcohol sugars, they ferment them, and they can actually convert them into forms of carbohydrates, simple sugars, that we actually can absorb. So again, this is where, the legal definition sort of doesn't necessarily agree with the biologic definition, what's actually happening in our body, okay? And so, when we repeat this, multiple times during the day, there's a lot of extra calories that are not accounted, and these calories can actually derail us. Now, Lucky Charms, this is amazing because nobody would think in their right mind that Lucky Charms was a wholesome breakfast food. But when we think back to the fiber 1, there were 128 calories, from carbohydrates. But when we look at Lucky Charms, look at the breakdown. Total calories per half a cup is 110. So right then and there, that there's fewer calories in the Lucky Charms than there is in the fiber 1. But let's look at the fat calories. So, well, there's 1 gram of fat, that equals 9 calories. 21 actual absorbable carbohydrate grams times 4 equals 84. Well, there's 84 calories here, 21 grams of absorbable carbohydrate, compared to the 128 calories that were in the fiber 1. Isn't that amazing? So nobody in their right mind would think that Lucky Charms is a better alternative than fiber 1, now would they? Okay, so where is the truth in marketing here? Okay, and quite truthfully, these healthy claims that are on the label, once you dig a little bit deeper, sort of disappear. They evaporate. Protein, 2 grams, or 8 calories, and again, we've got a 9-calorie deficit, which is less than we saw in the fiber 1. So let's move on to another, even more shocking example.
Yeah,
and this
made
is
my head explode.
Oh, we missed one here. There was another slide which looked at Kellogg's Smart Start Healthy Heart. Oh no, let's keep it right here. This one here, let's do the breakdown again. 230 calories. Okay, now the serving size here is larger, 1¼ cups. Okay, but we look at the total fat. We have 3 grams. Okay, we have the total carbohydrates, 46 grams, and only 5 of them come in the form of dietary fiber. Okay, sugars 17 grams, other carbohydrates 24 grams. So we can see that there are, a lot of carbohydrates here. And when we look at the label, okay, with the ingredients, okay, this is where, the sort of the breakdown on the left-hand side really is only a fraction of the story. When we look at the ingredients, okay, and I'm going to try to do this like Dr. Mike did, but when we look at the ingredients, well, the first ingredient is oat bran, okay? And what we're doing here is we're looking for the sugars, the hidden sugars, the sugar bombs, okay? So oat bran, we got rice, sugar, oat clusters, sugar, toasted oats, rolled oats, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, partially hydrogenated soybean oil, molasses, honey, wheat flakes, crisp rice, sugar, malt, salt, corn syrup, polydextrose, honey, cinnamon, BHT, artificial vanilla, high fructose corn syrup, malt flavoring, potassium chloride, salt, baking soda, ascorbic acid. So the rest of the ingredients are mostly preservatives and added vitamins, but no sugars. But we can see that there's a significant amount of sugars, okay, hidden in various forms throughout Kellogg's Smart Start Healthy Heart. Okay, so is this really good for your heart? Okay, it's encouraging to note that the first ingredient is oat bran, but beyond that, everything is mostly sugar. Okay, so I don't think this is very healthy for your heart. So another example, the next slide.
Here we go.
Here we go. This is Special K, okay? And how many women, how many people, have bought into the commercials? If you want to lose weight, you need to eat Special K. Okay, and this has got fruit and yogurt in it, so it really has to be good for you, right? Well, when we do the breakdown, okay, we can see, let's look at the carbohydrate content, 27 grams. 3 of them are fiber, which is not a very great percentage. Sugars 10 grams and other carbohydrates 14 grams. So when we look at the total number of calories in the serving, 120 of them, most of them, almost 100 of them, are coming from carbohydrates, and most of these are simple carbohydrates. So let's move on to the next slide, and let's look at the ingredients here. So what I'd like to do is take a little break here, and I'd like everybody to sort of try to count up all of the sugars that are in this list, okay? And, even Dr. Mike, I got this wrong the first time, and Dr. Mike even got it wrong because there are a lot of hidden sugars in here. So we're going to take a few minutes, or a minute, and, send Woodson a little text message or respond on this little panel on the side where you can count up the sugars and let us know what you think.
All right, we're going to give you a couple of seconds to do that, and I'm already tallying up myself. Okay, start sending them in. I've got one at 19. I've got another text that just came in at 21.
Wow.
I've got another text just hit my phone at 22.
Woohoo.
Come on, guys, don't be shy.
Do I hear 23, 23, 23?
Exactly. That's how
Yep.
I feel. Oh, whoops, here we go. All right, now we're 23. See if any more come in. I'll give y'all about 10 more seconds. Come on, don't be bashful. 21. I mean, shoot, after I read this, I didn't feel so bad about me being on the O diet for 20
All right.
years.
Well, let's move on, and I'm just going to highlight all of the sugars, okay? When we read across the list, there's sugar. Then we go another sugar, honey, molasses, sugar. Then we have corn syrup, brown sugar. We have sugar, sugar, molasses, honey, sugar, barley malt, corn syrup, polydextrose, honey, high fructose corn syrup, malt flavoring, confectioner's glaze, modified cornstarch, corn syrup, tapioca dextrin. So I counted 22. Okay.
Ding, ding, ding. Stop all calls. We have a winner.
Yep. So pretty amazing, isn't it? Okay. And you know, another thing that I want to point out. Look at the first ingredient. What is it? It's rice. There are some forms of rice that have a higher glycemic index than table sugar. Isn't that amazing? Okay, so the key here, and the glycemic index means, you know, rice is, you know, basically a carbohydrate, a starch, but the glycemic index, you know, refers to how quickly that starch is broken down into sugars. Okay, so the key ingredient, the first ingredient here, is probably worse for you than the sugar, the plain sugars. You know, malt has a higher glycemic index than table sugar, and that we saw malt in a number of instances on this label. Okay, and this is supposed to help you lose weight. Okay, well, I mean, I think all throughout the MyGreat28 program, we've realized that that simple carbohydrates, and I think the next slide really highlights this well. Okay, what has happened to the nation? In the 70s, there was a concerted effort on multiple fronts, you know, to help reduce the risk of heart disease. Okay, and so they targeted fats as sort of the culprit, because we realized that cholesterol would build up in the arteries, and when I was in medical school, we thought that the heart attack was due to just cholesterol building up to the point or it actually plugged up the artery and you had a heart attack. Well, we know that that's wrong. Okay, cholesterol plays a role, but it's dietary cholesterol really isn't the culprit. Okay, so we push people away from, you know, fat in their diet, and what did they substitute it with? What did the food manufacturers come up with to make food palatable? Well, they added a lot more carbohydrates, a lot more simple carbohydrates, you know, a lot more high fructose corn syrup, a lot more sugar, a lot more salt. And look what happened to the incidence of obesity. In 1991, okay, there were 4 states on the map. Michigan was one of them, and that's where I'm from originally, where we had 15 to 19%. Well, look at 2010. There are no more blue states on the map. You know, everyone's yellow or worse. So we've got obesity rates in every state in the nation from 20 to greater than 30%. So we saw a more than doubling of the obesity rates in a very short period of time. And why is that? Well, it's because of all of the simple carbohydrates that we have, you know, sort of been coaxed into eating, okay? And they tend to be addictive, you know, much more so than fats, okay? And so, you know, the culprit here clearly is simple carbohydrates, and we need to get away from them. So let's look at the next slide, Woodson, and I think this slide sort of sums it up. You know, my philosophy when it comes to food is if it has a label that you can't decipher on the back, you should probably put it back on the shelf and reach for something that doesn't have a label. And what doesn't have a label? You know, that's your fruits and your vegetables. That's the good quality meats, you know, the good fats that you can incorporate into your diet. Everything that is on the approved food list, okay, none of that stuff has a label. Okay, so simplify your life, you know, eat as much of the good food, you know, especially the good quality fruits and vegetables, you know, as you want. Eat until you're full, eat until you're satisfied, wait 6 to 8 hours, and then repeat, okay? It's a very simple formula. It's chock full of good nutrition and antioxidants. It is going to make you feel good. It is going to keep you healthy. And it's going to help you lose the weight that you really want to lose. So that wraps it up, Woodson. I understand Dr. Elvira is next. I can't wait to hear her.
Yes, and thank you so much. I love that graphic, but that is so helpful because it is. I mean, we've all kind of been duped, and we pay more attention to the commercial than what actually we're buying and can read for ourselves. So I loved that. Okay. Now, go ahead.
Commercials work. That's why Madison Avenue makes so much money.
That's exactly right. And now Dr. Elvira is going to coach us more on food labels, specifically now how misled I was trying to be healthy and getting into the produce section. So take it away, Dr. Elvira.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Greg. That was really good. I mean, that's a really dry subject to talk to about, especially when you have no instructions about nutrition. So you did a great job. Thank you for making it easier for me now. So we're going to talk and continue this talk about labels. But as Dr. Greg said in our previous slide, you need to simplify your life and eat those foods that usually don't have a label, but they are going to help you get into a healthier lifestyle and a healthier life. Which are those? Organic fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, and you can make your own juices out of the fruits and the vegetables, not the ones that come in a bottle with faulty and malicious labels that are going to make you think that you're buying such a great green juice, but they have tons of sugars in it, so you like the taste, even though the color you might not like it because it's green, which is a very common complaint I find every single day. Oh, but it's green. I'm not gonna juice my veggies. Ooh, that should taste horrible. Well, they know how to get people, and this is what we're talking about. So we decided that the better foods to eat are the organic fruits, veggies, nuts, and seeds. But what are we going to do when we go groceries? We have to buy our food for ourselves and for the rest of the family, including children, and that could be tough. Well, they have put some little stickers on every fruit and vegetable we're going to find in the product section, and we're going to decode this. So what we're going to be doing is understanding what a PLU sticker is. It's price lookup, you know. They go ahead and they look it up. The cashier will put those numbers, and immediately the produce you're purchasing goes up in the screen, and they weigh it, and they tell you how much it costs. Well, I have news for you. What does this mean? What does it really mean? Well, there are several codes, and they start with different numbers, and some of them are shorter than others. There is one that you see, it's a 4-digit code, and it usually starts with a number 3 or a number 4. And this is your conventionally grown produce. This is your bananas, everything that has been grown everywhere without much, probably, regulations, let's put it that way. And there is another sticker that has a 5-digit code, and the number starts with 9. This is your organic produce. This is the one that has been certified organic, okay? This is the one you want. And rarely you're going to see one that starts with a 5-digit code, has 5 digits and starts with an 8. Those are the genetically modified products, and you hardly ever see that. And why don't you see them? Because it's not convenient. You would have to require a lot of explanation and put labels and some posters by the foods, and people really want to know what they're eating, more and more so, thank goodness, but it's not convenient for the biotech companies. So now we know that what is a PLU sticker, price lookup, and which are the numbers we have to look. So we are really understanding if we are purchasing for our families conventionally grown produce, organic or genetically modified. Okay, so can we go to the next slide, Woodson? Can we move on?
Yes. It should be showing up any second.
Okay. Yeah, well, you know, these codes are real. They're not made up. They have been made to guide the public to purchase the foods adequately. So this is not an invention. What I was saying about that, the number 8, you hardly ever see it, it's because most of us already having some, well, not most of us. Unfortunately, the statistics say that the majority of us don't even think we have genetically modified foods, and that's what GMO stands for. And that is sad. Just a few percentage understands what it means. So I'm going to try to teach you a little bit about this in a nutshell, as fast and as simple as possible. Genetically modified foods have quietly become a second nature in the grocery stores in the United States. Experts will say that about 60 or up to 70% of the processed foods in your grocery store shelves have genetically modified ingredients. Can we go to, we're going to stay in this slide for now. There are several common foods that we have no idea. We consume them every day, and they're used as fillers or as preservatives in different type of foods. So since you don't have a label to show you which are genetically modified, you really don't know. But can you believe that the most common genetically modified foods are soybeans, corn, cotton, even grapeseed oil, yellow crookneck squash and zucchini, alfalfa, canola, and even sugar beets. More and more of the produce keeps being added to the list, and we can get this in the FDA government.org website, and also we can get in the CDC. There's several websites that can help us in the search for these. Not the most common are the biggest producers, so corn fills everything, and soybeans as well. So we're going to slowly find that a lot more of the foods that we really eat are genetically modified. Is this safe? I mean, is this good? Let's pass to the next slide, please, Woodson. Well, the government says genetically modified foods are safe. They stand by it. They say the crops are going to have a better tolerance to resist disease, and they're going to increase the food supply of the world. Well, that's good and dandy. That's great. Those are very good thoughts. But what are the risks? Are we going to have some risk? Well, not really. We don't know exactly what long-term risk or benefits are really going to be in these when we know that there are big companies like, for example, Monsanto's. I mean, there are several companies in the world. Monsanto is one of the biggest in the world, and There are other names that I can mention now, but that doesn't even come to the point for the purpose of this conference. It's that they do make crops of genetically modified foods. And we can have problems with this. What are the risks? Well, they're going to be sprayed. They're going to be sprayed with pesticides for several reasons. Well, crops die. Drought can kill some of the crops, different organisms that may attack them. So they want to protect their crops so they can have a good, successful year and sell and make a lot of food. Well, you know what? By genetically modifying foods, we can introduce allergens. Nobody talks about allergens when they're talking about genetically modified foods. Well, you can get allergies with your own natural foods, but when you're adding extra things like pesticides, you don't know how you're transforming that crop. You really don't know. We really don't know. And the studies, are they all completely honest? Is somebody doing its job and passing standards and regulations the way they should? We don't know. You and I don't know. The other problem that I see with this is we can have an accidental contamination. You can contaminate one crop with the other once you genetically modify it. And so this is a big possibility as well. What's the other thing that has been increasing, and we know in science, in the science world, is talked a lot, is the antibiotic resistance. There again, we're getting something that is going to hurt us at the short and long haul throughout life. And the other thing that is happening is it may be adversely changing the nutrient of a crop. And we are, at the end, you know, we're creating a super weed that we have no idea what is it going to do. We do not have. So what does this mean? Genetic modified foods are very common. They are probably 60 to 70% all over in your shelves, and you have no idea they exist. And they may have the benefit of feeding the countries in the world that don't have a lot of food and they need it. But how are we doing this? Are we processing these crops with honesty, without pesticides, without any chemicals that can, at the long term, hurt us as a human race? We don't know. But that being said, now we know that things can change. We can go to the next slide. They're adding certain things to it, so this is kind of funny, but at the end it may not. So you may have some genetic component from a fish and feed tomatoes so the skin is stronger. And I don't even want to name this one. Would you? What's in it? Like a fish tomato? I have no idea, but I don't want that in my food, in my plate. Okay, we can go to the genetically engineered foods, and this I've seen in different websites, and it's kind of funny. And that's the next slide. And it's kind of like a joke, but they're called frankenfoods. And this is something, it's a term that when you pull up even websites from the FDA and you ask about labeling and foods that have genetically modified, have been genetically modified, you're going to see the frankenfood name there, and it's going to make you laugh, but it's kind of funny, but it's not. So you're going to have a lot of toxins and a lot of combinations that may change and alter your food. That's just a little joke there. Let's go ahead and talk about the countries who are labeling the GMOs. Now, what I have read mostly is that the Eastern European countries are starting to have stricter laws and make the biotech companies label the GMOs. So, but we are not there yet. There's a lot of economical interest by the biotech companies, and that's one of the biggest reasons. So 64 countries require labeling, which is good. We should have more. About 93% of the American population will support labeling. We're getting smarter. We want to learn more because we're seriously considering every day how can we feed our family healthier and avoid diseases. 27 states already have introduced labeling initiatives, and these you can also find them in the government websites. And 3 states have passed labeling laws. So as you see there, Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont. So this is a good step ahead. One of the websites, and is in the next slide, is the environmentalworkinggroup.org, and these give us guides to any shopper, you, me, anybody, and this website will give us guides about which pesticides are used in which products and how can they affect us. And they have done tons of studies. You know how you walk into the grocery store and you have all these beautiful apples and all the colors just presented right there at you, and they're not the organic ones. Even though the organic ones, they were going to sell it to you for a lot pricier per pound, but the apples, unfortunately, became the #1 dirty produce. And what that means is if you take a crop and you put a lot of pesticides, that apple, it's going to keep in the skin those pesticides. And the cleanest one was the avocado. Rule of thumbs, the thinner the skin of a fruit or a vegetable, or is it very leafy and soft, the higher the probabilities that you're going to get some contaminants. So if that apple was grown with pesticides and things in the soil that you don't want to put in your mouth, you may want to think it twice. The harder the skin, like the avocados, the more difficult for you to get a contamination, so you don't have to pay a lot of money for it. You may want to even purchase the non-organic because you cut the skin off, you do not eat the skin of the avocado. So most likely you're going to be safe. So that's a rule of thumbs, a little bit of words of wisdom there, so to make your life a little bit easier when you go groceries. Okay, now we're going to go to the next slide, and this is funny. How many people see every single day, you walk into the grocery store and this is natural, or this is healthy, or this is good for your health? Well, you know what? That is not a regulated term. That is not going to tell you anything that's real. But it's catchy, and the marketing people know. So many foods are labeled natural, but they're GMOs. So we already know that they can have pesticides, they can change the crops, they can cross-contaminate, they can increase the allergens, they can make super weeds, so think twice. Yogurt. A lot of people love yogurt. First of all, they have GMOs. We talk about corn being one of the foods that are most commonly genetically engineered. So there you go. You buy Western corn oil, and it's genetically engineered. So you think you're buying something healthier, and you're really not. Let's talk about some fats now and go to the trans fat and fatty acids. They're also known as hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils. And I'm not going to talk to you about this at depth, but you're not supposed to eat them, especially in big amounts. They're artificial fats, and they're created by adding in hydrogen to a liquid vegetable. And you know what this does? Preserves the shelf life of the products. That's why they use it. You go to food chains, and they add it to their French fries, and they make them really crispy, and they taste better, full of oil and full of those hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils of fats, and you're eating really unhealthy. But they do it so they stay preserved. They add it to everything they cook with in those food chain where you like to stop and go through the drive-thru and eat while you go from home to work or work to home. So that's a no-no. And that's why they use it. They stabilize some of the foods so they can put a label there saying that they have a year that you can consume them or not. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is one is fun. I feel sorry for all of those who have little kids and they want to eat the same thing their classmates eat, and it's like, why don't you buy me Cheetos, Mommy? Because so-and-so eats it, so most of you are going to have to face that. Well, they now have created these new packaging to make, and they say no trans fat. But when you look at the ingredients, like Dr. Greg said, you go back and look at that food label. Well, what does it have? Partially hydrogenated oils. So, and it has canola oil, which we know they have GMOs, and they have soybean, which we know it's been genetically engineered, and it has a lot of other things that are artificial and they're not good for you. And they have monosodium glutamate. How many people have a lot of allergies with that and reaction? So and that's not even talking about artificial colorants. So sometimes I see kids that are brought by the parents to the office. They have urticaria, which is hives and an allergic reaction. They don't know what it is, but they eat so many things that have so many allergens in it and artificial colors that it is very difficult to diagnose them. So even though it looks pretty and your kids want to eat what Johnny eats next door, you're going to have to say no to this as much as you can. Okay, next one. Oh, Benecol spread. This is good for the adults. Oh, I don't eat butter. No, I don't eat anything artificial. I'm buying Benecol. Yes, really? Well, it says it has no trans fatty acids, but it has a lot of hydrogenated soybean oil, and it has other fatty acids and soybean and artificial flavors and a lot of things that you don't even know how to pronounce. So that is not as healthy as it is. And that tagline underneath, Benecol proven to significantly reduce your cholesterol, that's not true. Those hydrogenated oils do not increase cholesterol, do not reduce it. They do increase it. So don't let yourself be fooled. Okay, let's go to the other one. Flintstones. Flintstones vitamins. What are we doing to our children? We're giving them vitamins because, they forget to eat once in a while, and they love those Flintstones. Well, it is sad. They do have hydrogenated oils. They have soybean. They have aspartame. Aspartame is known to cause chronic fatigue, and it is a sugar that it's going to keep doing the same thing as corn and high fructose corn syrup and all the other bad sugars that you have heard about. So don't feed your kids vitamins that are going to hurt them. In order to make them taste half decent, they load them with sugar. They load them with fat so they can have a good shelf lifespan. So don't do that. That is hazardous to your children's health. So that's a no-no. Next one. Let's see. We're going to talk about the trans fat loophole. Okay, why can't they get away and putting trans fatty acids in those products? Because there's not really a big label that tells us how much they have to have in the product in order to say that they do have or do not have trans fats. Well, if a product contains less than 0.5 grams or trans fat, it can be labeled as no trans fat. So somebody's lying here. So look at the label again. Companies adjust your serving size to make it fit the law and they can put no trans fat. Okay, so some of them you see that they say they have a quarter of a cup, half a cup, 3/4 of a cup, or a cup. They do it on purpose because if they have more than 0.5 grams of the trans fats, they have to document it and put it in the label because the government has told them they have to. So that's how they manipulate the quantity of it and putting no trans fat on their packaging. Okay, well, let's go to Jack LaLanne. This is kind of funny, but if men made it, don't eat it. Okay, that's what it means. Don't eat artificial foods that may enhance you in the wrong way. So just think about some of the physical fitness people that they do body sculpturing, and they abuse steroids and testosterone hormones to enhance their muscle development. So just think of it that way. We eat things that we have no control over, and we don't know if they're regulated like they should be, and we can have health issues. By the way, I don't want to look like him. What do you think, Woodson?
I hear you. I totally hear you. But you know, there is something to be said for living a long, vital life. Like what you were saying, eating stuff that we can pronounce and we know where it came from. Because this training has absolutely sent me into outer space. With the Binacol, the Flintstone vitamins. I mean, as a mom, I'm in that discussion right now with our children. Well, but Johnny brings this to lunch, or Stone told me the other week, one of his friends doesn't want to sit with him at lunch because Stone brings healthy food. And I said, well, if he doesn't want to be your friend because you don't have snacks and bags, you know, we need to talk about that. So anyways, I was fascinated with what you were saying.
Well, anyway, let's go. Bottom line, you got to eat real food. If you have a farmer's market, go to them. If you know how they're growing their produce and you know they're doing it in a good, honest way, go to them. That is good. Actually, let me tell you, it has been in some of the medical literature, some products that they sell even in Whole Foods have been found to be genetically modified. So we have to be more cautious about it. That's the bottom line. And there is a pyramid. Now this has changed. Now we're not doing a lot of pyramids for food, but this one is an anti-aging food pyramid. They have had several food pyramids throughout the last 20 years or so. There is a doctor that started writing books about inflammation in the 70s, and they thought he was a little weird. And now he was bestseller last year. So he decided to make the anti-inflammatory pyramid, which is pretty close to this one. And anti-aging, anti-inflammatory, that's what we want. It's not about the wrinkles. It's about not making our cells age too fast so we can have a healthier life. So what do you do on a daily basis? Drink tons of water. Like Dr. Greg said, 3 liters a day. Most people can't handle that unless you are in heart failure chronically because you have a heart condition. Then we need to restrict your water intake. So you should consult that with your personal physician. Supplements, but you need to get them high quality multivitamins and minerals and introduce some key antioxidants into your life because they're missing from our daily lifestyle. I talked about pH balance a few sessions ago, and I don't want you to forget that. And that's what we need. Our lifestyles, the poor sleep, the stress can lead to an acid type of, acidity in our bloodstream, and that increases inflammation. So that will increase the aging of our cells. So we need high quality, and that's like with MyGreat28, we are so fortunate to have excellent quality vitamins and supplements with the optimals, the vitamins and the minerals, and all highly supervised and produce in the most qualified ways you can get any product in this country right now. I'm fascinated by them. Then you're going to have the low glycemic index, whole fruits, and so don't eat a whole bunch of bananas, even though bananas are great. Think about it twice, especially if you're a borderline diabetic or pre-diabetic, or you have diabetes yourself, or you have a polycystic ovarian syndrome, which you produce a lot of cysts in your ovaries. Those ladies can eventually become diabetic. So that's why you have to eat a very healthy lifestyle, food, and lead a lifestyle that will lead you to have a lower glycemic level in your blood. Okay, and greens, above ground greens, leafy vegetables. Get your arugula, your kale, your spinach, all those that you are really going to consume tons of nutrition from them, and they're going to help in the process of staying healthy. And organic eggs. Olive oil is good. Remember, don't overheat it. You're going to get your fats from fish and poultry, and that you should do on a daily basis. They're recommending that twice per week you can get free-range poultry and deep-sea cold water fish, and once a week you can have your sweets, you know. You can have a little bit of sweets and your lean red meat. I do recommend that if you're going to eat meat, make sure you get it from an organically certified grass-fed beef. And this way, one step at a time, we can transform ourselves into a healthier person. And that's why MyGreat28 is a great option. It's a great system because in 28 days, you can make a difference in your life. You can decide to shed some pounds or feel better, less tired, less fatigue, have less pain. But in 28 days, you can see some results if you decide to make the change. Well, I think I don't have much more to say, Woodson, unless you have anything else for me to say.
No, that was fantastic. That's going to wrap up our presentation. And I cannot thank you, Dr. Elvira, and Dr. Greg so much, because I know the two of you might think this is a bit dry, but to the average person like me, this is the stuff we need to know, because these are the things that we can do every day, making these little decisions that will have huge ramifications for our long-term health, our short-term goals, our weight gain, weight loss, and also setting the stage for our families and our kids. And I thought it was awesome, and I want to thank you so much. And next week, we are going to be bringing you even more of how to incorporate this into your day-to-day activities. So thank you so much, and with that, we will be signing off.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to give us a little bit of information.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.